My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon for my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. The Gospel tells us how, after you, Jesus, healed a child possessed by a demon that your disciples couldn't cast out. Everyone was amazed at the majesty of God, and while they were all marveling at all that you were doing, you said to your disciples, "Let these words sink into your ears. For the Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men." And St. Luke says that your disciples did not understand this language, and it was so obscure to them that they did not get it, and they were afraid to ask you, Jesus, about this saying. Well, that's weird, because they were always asking about the meaning of parables and whatever they didn't understand. But it was not just that they didn't understand. No, it's that they were afraid to ask about it. They didn't like the idea of the Son of Man being handed over to men. And we cannot blame them. I don't like it either. You see, being reminded that things will not turn out as we expect, that we will under pressure and people will scorn us and discriminate against us for being disciples of Christ, that we too will be handed over to men, well, we don't like it so much, do we? But you, Jesus, don't tell us these things as a threat. It is more a warning so that we may be prepared. Just as one prepares to dive into a swimming pool and someone warns you that the water is cold. Sure, cold. So how many degrees? Well, we don't know. That's why you need to prepare yourself. Maybe it's 15 degrees Celsius, or maybe it's 15 Fahrenheit, and you need an ice pick to open a hole. Just watch out. Well, you said, Jesus, the Son of Man will be handed over to men. And as you said to your disciples at the Last Supper, the servant is no greater than his master. If they had persecuted me, they will also persecute you. It's not a threat, it's a warning to get ready, to be prepared. So, are we? Because in this 21st century, as in the first century, Christ hasn't got many followers. I mean, he's got fans, yeah, many, but real followers of his message, not that many. In this world, Christians are behind enemy lines. We always swim against the tide, and it can get exhausting. So we really need to be in very good shape. Otherwise, we will be carried away by the current, as it sometimes happens to some. The world is not a friendly environment, and it doesn't like resistance. But we Christians are the resistance. The world wants us to adapt, and we want the world to adapt. Church doesn't exist to please the world, but to transform the world. It is not a question of watering down the message to get more acceptance. But we are in the world, and the things of the world affect us. So much opposition eventually wears us down, and sometimes we are tempted to throw in the towel and go with the flow, to stop fighting. So, how do we prepare ourselves so that the world doesn't get us down, but we bring it up, so that the pressure of the world does not end up suffocating us? Or worse, so that we don't give in to avoid rocking the boat? Well, I heard a while ago that when trains began to run through La Pampa in Argentina, almost 2 centuries ago, they had a big problem. dust and soot from the locomotives got into every crack and every gap, and people ended up like Mary Poppins chimney sweepers. So they tried to seal the cracks, but the dust still found its way in. And finally, it took some years, but they eventually solved it. The principle is simple. If there is more pressure inside, nothing gets in. It was an air conditioning issue. If they could increase the pressure inside the train, nothing would get in. Instead, from inside, the air will flow outwards. It is a question of pressure. The same principle applies to planes and submarines, and also to the disciples of Christ. You see, to survive in a world like ours, where the environment is not very supportive and there is a lot of pressure to leave God aside, what is needed is to increase the internal pressure. For a disciple of Christ, prayer and penance, interior life, must increase when the difficulties of the environments or of the place where we live get more intense. A quote about this from St. Teresa of Calcutta helps me a lot. She told her nuns, "We have to do much more penance than even the Carmelites because of our closeness to sin." You see, when they went out into the slums, they were touching human misery and sin. So they needed more internal pressure, more penance. When we Christians walk the streets and go to the marketplace, tread every day in places where God is offended, and work with people who feel no sympathy for our message, so we must have that internal pressure to hold our ground, so that we don't give up and capitulate, so that we don't desert the world we must sanctify, the souls to whom we must bear witness to the light of Christ. And that's why you, Jesus, prayed at the Last Supper over your disciples. The world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. And then you asked the Father, I do not ask you to take them out of the world, but to keep them from the evil one. Well, we cannot give up on this world. We cannot capitulate. We cannot allow ourselves to be taken away by the current. We should not adapt the gospel to the world, but the world to the gospel. And so that the world doesn't overwhelm us, we need more internal pressure, more prayer, more penance. We need to get fit. We need to be strong to go out into the world and overcome it, just like you, Jesus, have. Jesus, we need your grace to get that strength to persistently swim against the tide, an internal pressure, so that the dust of this world doesn't clog our hearts. Prayer and mortification, so that the internal pressure is greater than the external pressure. And then, even if they hand us over like the Son of Man, they will not be able to defeat Christians. We will conquer the world and bring it back to Christ, just as the first disciples did, without allowing ourselves to be contaminated by the world, without capitulating. Mary, my Immaculate Mother, grant us the internal strength we need, that prayer and penance that will allow us to swim against the tide, even surrounded by misery and yet not be carried away by it. But on the contrary, that we may be the ones who purify the world with our penance, with our presence, drowning evil in an abundance of good. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.